Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Hey y'all, happy Sunday. Hope everything's going well for you and yours. And happy Father's Day to all you dads out there. I expect a low turnout today because it is Father's Day. and the dads out there are chilled out in the recliner with their feet up, being waited on hand and foot. Yeah, right. I think about the only truth to all of that is I expect a low turnout today because it is Father's Day and folks are spending time with family, which always comes first in my book. So, what I thought I'd do today is something a little bit different rather than get into a specific topic or have a guest or something of that nature. I figured I would leave it up to y'all. I've picked out 3 comments from my previous YouTube videos and decided we're going to talk about those as well as take your questions. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything of that nature, want to get something explained a little bit better, I'll do what I can to help you out. Just throw it over there in the chat and I'll mark it and bring it up and we'll get to it all in due course. But before I do anything else, as I typically do for a reason, I want to give a shout out to Steve over at Harneal Media, sponsor of Mark Lindsay CNC.com. And I wanted to say thank you for everything you do, Steve. Means more to me than you'll ever know. If you are thinking about a website to develop or increase your web presence, um, I Steve is the only person I will ever refer. He's not only dynamite at what he does, he is very, very competitively priced. And what you'll get out of Steve is 100% personalized service. I mean that. When you deal with Harneal Media, you deal with Steve. You're not going to talk to some nameless, faceless person in a call center that you'll never talk to again. You're going to deal with him 100% of the time. He's very good at what he does. And what I like best is he gives you performance. He doesn't give you excuses. He'll do as much or as little as you'd like. If you want to set up an e-commerce site uh, and start putting your products and services out to the public, he can set you up with an e-store and get you going real smoothly. I mean, I just can't say enough good about him. He is on top of it 100% of the time. So thank you again, Steve, for everything that you do. Do yourself a favor, go over to harnealmedia.com. There's a link to Harneal Media in every video on this channel, and it's that way for a reason. Hit that contact us link and reach out to Steve. He'll take care of you. I'm serious about that. Thank you again, Steve. Okay, we will get into a few things here. As I said, it was, I've basically chosen 3 comments about yes, I need to thank you for mentioning that, Sargon. I appreciate it. I'd also like to welcome aboard Dion from Misty Woods Tradecraft for becoming a channel member. Thank you very much for becoming a channel member. Um, it's a friendly group, pretty gregarious. Um, you'll see as time trundles merrily on just how tight knit this group has become. For sudden reason, I got the hiccups all of a sudden. Well, let's muscle through it. And I host a members only live stream every Monday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. And the way to find that links to that live stream, and I should have done this before I went live, but hey, is head over to the community tab here on my YouTube channel. You'll see the link right there that says community. Click on that link, and once it loads up, now I'm not going to scroll down because then everybody will find the links. Uh, just scroll down a little bit and you'll find the link to that live Q&A, or not Q&A, that live stream tomorrow. We focus on your projects, your questions, your comments, your concerns. You'll also find my email address in every description over on the member side, and you can reach out to me. If you're on Facebook and you'd like to join our private Facebook group and our private Facebook chat, again, my email is in the description of every members only live, which you can find over here on the live links. And reach out to me. I'll get you hooked up with the members only Facebook group. It's a good time. We have a lot of fun. So thank you for joining, and I hope you'll stick around. All right, let's get into a couple of questions that I got on my previous comments as soon as I find them. There they are. Okay. I had one comment from Richard Schrader, excuse me, and he asks, can I select start points of my choice when V-carving sign work? Now, there are a couple of different answers to this question. I'm it depends on whether you're talking about it depends on whether you're talking about the start points of the vectors or if you're talking about the order in which the vectors are selected to be carved. Now, in V carving, it's a little bit different than, well, it's not all that different. Let's go with a star here and a star here and a star here. If you're talking about the start point of each of these vectors, you can select the vector and tap the letter N on your keyboard. You can see that the start point is this green point right here. Well, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have the start point right there. So I can come over to this. I got to share screen, Mark. There we go. I've got stars posted up here, as I said, and I'll come out of node editing. If you're talking about changing the start point of an individual vector, what you'll do is select it, tap the letter N on your keyboard, go into node editing. And as you can see by this green point, that's the start point of this vector. And it doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense to have it over here. So if I want to make this my vector start point, I will right click on that start point and I come right up here and it says make start point, or the letter P is the keyboard shortcut. So I click and it changes my start point down here. Okay. Now, if I come up, select this one, I'll have to do the same thing. And remembering the keyboard shortcut, I just put my cursor over that point, tap the letter P, and it makes it the start point. Then I'll do the same thing over here and make that the start point. So that's how you would select the start point of each individual vector. Now, if you're going to V-carve these and you want to do them in a specific order, when you come here over to your V-carve engraving toolpath, we don't have really, the only thing we can do is right here. We can either use the vector start points, and then we can use the vector selection order if we want. Now, that I am going to use because I wanted to start, with this start point. But let's take a look at what happens if I just come along and I select all of the vectors and then calculate those tool paths. Because I started my selection up here, this is going to be the first star carved. So let me slow down. Well, I don't have to do it super slow. Let me go ahead and preview these. So it's going to start that star first. Then when it is finished, well, let's speed it up a little bit. Then it moves over to this one because it's the closest one to it. Then it'll come down and do this last star. All right, we don't need to watch this carve all of them. Now I'll reset my preview, come back over into my 2D view. I'm going to go back into my toolpath and click off. Now I can check vector selection order. Okay. And I'm going to calculate these. So I want this one to carve first for whatever reason, then hold down shift, and I want this one to carve second, then hold down shift and carve that one last. Now let's calculate, and we see I'm going to wrap it over and start carving this one first. Then come down and carve this one second. Then come up and carve this one third. So in a V-carve toolpath, you can select the order in which you select the vectors and have it run that way. You don't have to have it start carving on the start points, and you don't have to use a specific selection order. So let me click off, come back over to the 2D view, and just select them all, and we'll see how it goes. It's going to start with this one first because I went from left to right. If I click off and go right to left, then calculate, it's going to continue in the same order. It's just going to move to the most efficient use of its time and go for the gusto on that score. So changing the vector selection order is fairly easy. Now that's in the V-carve toolpath. If I change my layers, we'll turn on, I've added some other vectors over here to show a difference when using the profile toolpath. Now, if I select all of these vectors, and again, I'm going from the top left down to the bottom right, come into a profile toolpath, and I want this 1/8" end mill to cut all the way through the material. I can come down here to this tab on the same line as ramps leads. I can select the order. Now here I can select one or more of these criteria. I can select the vector selection order so that me starting up here, it's basically it's going to wrap it up and start cutting this one first and then work its way down because that's the order in which they were selected. So if I calculate that, okay, the selected vectors contain groups within multiple open contours. We know that. It's multiple open vectors. These will be cut as individual contours and not as a single contour. We know that. We want it to cut individual contours. To machine these open contours as one, they must first be joined together using the join form. I don't want to join them together. Would you like to continue creating the toolpath or cancel? I want to continue creating, so I just select OK. Now, if we look at it, because I have vector selection order checked, it's going to wrap it up here and start cutting this way. We'll go ahead and preview it. It's going to start cutting this way, then work its way down in order. And that has to do with the way I selected those vectors. I went from top left to bottom right. Let me reset my preview. We'll go back into the profile toolpath, go back over here to order. And again, I still have vector selection order checked. I can actually come along from the bottom right to the top left. We'll calculate that. Okay. It's going to go in the same order. It doesn't matter whether I select left to right or right to left. They're all selected as one group. But if I uncheck that, go back into the toolpath, and for some reason, I want to skip every other 1, 2, 3, then go 1, 2, 3. That should be how it calculates the toolpath. And that's exactly what it's going to do. It's going to start at the top one, since that's the first one I selected. When it's finished, it's going to wrap it down to this one. When it's finished, it's going to wrap it down to that one. And when it's finished with that, it's going to come back and do this one. So you can change the order in which vectors or holes or pockets are cut. And that's simply with the vector selection order. Generally speaking, I don't use this. There are occasions when I do use this, but not very often. What I tend to use for profile toolpaths is start from left to right, because I usually set my Z0, XYZ0 to the bottom left corner. I want to cut from bottom to top, cut in a grid, and take the shortest path. That to me has been that's been the most efficient use of the toolpath, and it lessens the amount of rapid moves. I'll calculate that. Okay. And we see it's starting at the left, but it's starting at the bottom. And it'll just work its way up the ladder until it gets to the last vector, then wrap it back over to my XY datum position. So the short answer to the long question is, can I select start points of my choice when V-carving sign work? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. So let's get back over here. 8 Center is asking, what is the official topic for today? I haven't been keeping track. There isn't an official topic because it's Father's Day here in the US, and I believe over in the UK as well. So I figured I would have a low turnout today. So I'm picking your questions. And I've also selected 3 questions from the comments I've had on previous videos. So there isn't really an official topic. So if you have a comment, question, concern, by all means, put it in the chat. We'll get to it. So let's see here. Eyal Peleg says, does anybody know if there is a way to have YouTube chat show all messages by default instead of top messages? There may be a third-party app that does that. I haven't found it. When you go into any kind of YouTube live stream with the chat, you do have to go in and change that from top comments to all comments. Now, let me preface that. Let me qualify that by saying I use the. I'm on a PC. I don't use the YouTube app, and I don't watch YouTube videos on my phone. Screen is too small. These old eyes can't see what they're talking about on a video on that screen, so I don't even bother with it. Again, there may be a third-party app that might change that, but I haven't found it. So let's see here. We'll go over to, let me clear all of this first. Then I'll come back and we'll get into another one. So, all right. The next question I got was from Vic Stewart, who asks, if I have written some text, then left, then needed to modify the text, how do I get back into the editing mode? And how do I carve when there are open vectors? Well, let me go ahead and get back in and we'll add some text here. So, let's add some text to this design, and it takes a few minutes for all my fonts to load because I have way too many. All right, I'm going to add some simple text out here, and we'll go with that. Let me center it in my material, make it a little bit bigger. There we go. So I have my text all figured out, ready to go. So I save the file. Let's do that. Save as. I'll put it on my desktop and I'll just call it new CRV3D. Save. I probably already have done that. Now I'll close that file. So now I want to go in and edit that text. So I'll start by loading that file back up. And there is my text. Now I need to edit that text. So I'll select it and go back into the text form. And from there, it's a simple matter of editing it. If I need to increase the space or decrease the space between letters, or if I want to put it on a curve, something like that. Let me Control Z that. I don't want to do that. Let's just change the text altogether. I just need to select the text and go, there we go. Close it. Now I can resize it to better fit my material. And let's make sure it is centered in that material. And there we go. So basically put, what you're doing is, whether it's been saved or not, you can always go back, you just select it and go back into that text field, or that text form rather, and do any editing you need to do. If I want to take it off of bold, there we go. So now The other question in this comment is, how do I carve when there are open vectors? You have limited choices when it comes to carving open vectors. Let's go back. Whoops, not sheet, layer. Let's go back to layer 1. Now I deleted those lines. Well, that's okay. Let me open this vector here by cutting it. So right click, cut vector. Right click, cut vector. So this star is not joined. I have one open vector here and one open vector here. You are very limited in what you can do as far as carving open vectors. You can't V-carve. If I select that star and I click on V-carve and I'm not changing anything up here, and I go to calculate, it's ignoring unsuitable open vectors. 2 open vectors were identified in the selection and are being ignored. There are 0 remaining vectors. So it will not create a toolpath for those open vectors. It has to be a closed vector to V-carve. What I can do is I can do a profile. A profile is going to simply cut an outline. It is not going to hollow out the inside like a V-carving would. To do that, you have to join the vectors. You can, however, carve you can carve open vectors with a V-bit. Now I'll do that right now. Let's go 1/8 of an inch, roughly 3 millimeters. And I'm going to select a 30-degree V-bit, select that. And what we'll do is we'll come down here. We're going to cut on the vector. And we're going to come down here to corners. Now, it's grayed out, but simply because I'm cutting on the vector. But if I cut to the outside or the inside of that vector, I have the option of making sharp external corners and sharp internal corners. So it'll cut outside the vector, but it'll give me sharp inside and outside vectors, or excuse me, corners. So let's go ahead and preview that. We're cutting to the outside. We'll calculate it. Again, it's warning us that it's making individual contours and not one vector. We're fine with that. And we'll preview it. Now it cut the outline of that vector, and it gave us sharp internal corners, but out here, we still have the radius of that bit. We're going to have the radius of that bit because, again, it's a round bit. The reason for this, but if you look up here, it's not that way. The reason for this goes back to how it's machining the vector. When you say cut to the outside / right of the vector, let's go over here to the 2D view. I'll zoom in on this. That's the vector start point. That's the vector start point. When we say we're cutting to the outside right of the vector, what's going on is, imagine standing on this start point, looking in this direction. Cutting to the outside right of the vector means the bit's going to be out here. If I select this vector and we're cutting to the outside right of the vector, the bit's going to ride right here. So in this preview, what we have going on is here, the bit's cutting to the outside. Here, the bit is cutting to the inside. And we can see that plainly right here. The bit's cutting to the inside on this vector, but cutting to the outside on this vector. Okay? And as Wade says, carving open vectors can cause randomness in the cutting direction. It's not necessarily random, but you're right. And it's all back to where that start point is, to the outside right of the vector. It's cutting to the right of the vector, no matter which vector you have selected. So cutting to the inside would be just the opposite. That's why when I carve an open vector, I carve on the vector, not to the outside or inside. Now, if you notice over here, that grays out sharp internal and external corners. It's going to cut on the vector, so it's going to cut whatever corner is selected. Okay, so let me go ahead and calculate that cutting on the vector. Calculate. I'll reset my preview, and now we'll carve it, and that's what we end up with. It did create sharp corners here, but we still have the round corners of the radius. So basically, if you can join the vectors into a closed vector, that will eliminate all of this. If it's not possible to do, you can, again, do a profile toolpath with a V-bit, and then you have your decisions to make here. Okay? So, close that. I'll click off and reset the preview. All right. So, let's see here. Dion is asking, does VCarve Pro have a tool to calculate the center mass point for placing a keyhole slot for hanging an irregularly shaped sign? Not really, but there is a workaround. It's not so much center of mass as it is the center of the vectors. Let me demonstrate that. We'll go back over here. I come back over into the 2D view, and I'll get rid of these stars. And I'll come down here to my clip art, and let's make us a, I don't want to use a 3D, I want to use 2D vectors. Let's find an irregularly shaped panel. There's an irregularly shaped panel. Back over to the design tab. And let's make that a little bit smaller. I'll make it a little bit shorter. There we go. Now, let's say I want to put a keyhole slot. Well, I make my keyholes just a little bit differently than a lot of folks do. Some folks will use the keyhole gadget. I don't use a keyhole gadget personally. I just draw a vector and use that. So the way I do it is I create a very, very tiny rectangle. And I'm going to make it 3/4 of an inch tall, so 0.75 high. And I'm going to make it very, very narrow. And that'll be, let's make it 0.02. No, that's still too big. Let's make it 0.006. So 6 thousandths wide. That is not a very big rectangle. And I'll just put it right there. Close. Now what I can use, you want the center of the material. Select what I want to align, then select what I want to align it to. Then I'll go into my alignment form and I'll come down here, align to selection. This is going to align the first selection to the last selection. If I have multiple things I want to align in here, it'll align all of them to the last selection. And I want to put it in the center. So I'll just click that and it moves my rectangle to the center of the bounding box for this vector. What I mean by that is it will draw an imaginary rectangle from this corner to this corner, then up to this height right here. So basically, imagine a rectangle that goes from here, close. Imagine that rectangle that encloses your odd size panel. It put this keyhole slot right in the center of this rectangle. This is known as a bounding box. So then to make the keyhole complete, I'll select my little rectangle here, tap N to go into node editing, and you really got to zoom in close. Right click, delete that span. There's my entry point. Come out of node editing, and I'm going to come over and do a profile toolpath using my keyhole bit, which I have down in my form tools. And I will select one single pass. Got to make sure that it's going to do it in one pass. Now, because of the way I have this made, it's going to plunge right here to the full depth of the keyhole. It's going to move up. It's going to come back, then retract. Okay. So now, because of the way Vectric displays its bitmap based, it will not show an undercut. So it's just going to look like a slot, like a end mill cut it. But that will be the keyhole. That's how I do my keyholes. This is also the only G code I ever keep. That's the only G code I ever keep. I create G code for with my XY datum set to the center. And I place this keyhole so that the center of the keyhole is on my XYZ0. From here, I can put a piece down, mount a piece on my table, figure out where I want that keyhole slot, mark that as my 0, and then set my XYZ0 to that place, and then cut the keyhole. That's the only G code I save. I have that saved on my other computer. Excuse me. Dwayne is asking, does that bounding box show on the 3D view? I don't believe so. Let me go back over here to the top, and I will move that to layer 2 just to get rid of it. So let's see if it shows the bounding box. I want to move. Nope. I want to align this to this. And let's look in the alignment. No, it does not show that bounding box in the 3D view. So now, what I'll do, Dion, is yeah, there you go. What I'll do, Dion, is I'll link my video on entering a keyhole bit and then using that keyhole bit in VCarve. I'll put a link to it in the description of this live stream as soon as we're finished live here. Because I do talk about, obviously you've already got your keyhole bit added to your tool database, but I do show how I use that keyhole toolpath. And what I did was I made one toolpath where it was a 3/4 inch tall keyhole, vertical keyhole, then another one that is a 2-inch wide horizontal keyhole. And again, for those projects, I set my XY datum position and my Z0 to the top of the material in the center. And then I centered that keyhole vector on that 0. So again, all I got to do is come up and mark where I want to put that keyhole, set that as my XY datum position, or set that as my XY0 and Z0. Then the bit will come, I position it over there, the bit will come down, move over, drop in, cut the keyhole, and then back out. So it just depends on what the piece is. You know, on something like this, I will put the keyhole, about a 2-inch wide keyhole, horizontally. That way you can adjust a little bit. If it's a little heavy on one side versus the other, you can level it after you've hung it. Vertical keyholes I use in certain situations where it's you can pretty much guarantee it's not horizontal, or it's not, you know, out of balance or anything like that. And usually in round things, I'll put a vertical keyhole in the center. So let's see here, and hopefully I got that. That answers that question. 8 Center says, is there a way to inverse the depth map in VCarve Pro for STL models. I got one from Printables, but it didn't load right, and I think it's because it's inverted. Let me ask you this about that. Is it a case of it's cutting the model negative versus cutting it positive? Because I'm going to go ahead and close this. No, I'm not going to make any changes, and I'm going to open up VCarve. Let's see here. Create a new file, and we should be, well, we'll make that 15 by 15 by 3/4 of an inch thick, XY datum. I'm going to bump my modeling resolution up to very high because I'm going to be putting a 3D model in here. Okay, now I'm in VCarve Pro. And you said it was an STL. Let me import an STL file, import a 3D model. And let's see, I don't think I have anything there. I know I have an STL. Well, I thought I had an STL. I guess I don't have an STL file in my, well, let's look. Is there an STL? There's an STL. I'll go ahead and I'll bring this guitar body in. It's bigger than the material, but what the heck. Okay, the first thing I need to do, looking at these sizes, is I need to scale it to imperial from metric. I need to center the model. This will work for our purposes of our demonstration. Now I'm going to position it. Nope. Left click mark. And we'll go ahead and bring that up. Put the modeling plane on the bottom. And I'll import it. All right, so if I look at this in the 2D view, I have it selected. Will it invert? Okay, let's find out. We can go into the picture editor and we can invert right here. Make sure it's selected, invert it, and the answer is no. It won't invert the depth map. What I will say, however, is come over into your component tree and take a look at the combine mode for the model. Now, the combine mode on this one is add, that upside down U. I can right click, go into combine mode, and make it subtract. And that will carve that relief into the material. It's almost like a mold, for example. So if your model is coming in like this, check the combine mode. Even if it says add, if it's inverted, if that depth map is inverted, by switching the combine mode, it should invert which direction it's going to carve. So if it's reverse from this, maybe you need to go over to subtract. It doesn't make sense. I know it. But that's about the only thing I can think of. Be very wary of getting into image editing software and trying to invert a depth map. A depth map, while it is technically a grayscale image, there's more to it than that. It's more of a gradient than most than most imaging software can mess with. You know what I mean? Excuse me. What I mean by that is the size of these pixels that make up this bitmap are usually more than most imaging software are willing to work in. I'm not going to say they're not capable of it, because some of them certainly are. But for instance, if we look at this model in particular, I go back into job setup. What I've done is I've divided my material up into 4 million points. And this bitmap is going to be broken up, and those points are going to be scattered all over the material. I can go even higher than this, but I wouldn't do it simply because there's no need for it. But odds are your imaging software is not going to break it up that small. It probably could, but you need to know that going in and set your resolution to that. And that's going to be a tall order. So yeah, try getting into the component tree and playing around with the combine mode. So hope that answered that question. Let's see here. Kurt H., one of my newer channel members. How you doing today, Kurt? Threading toolpath, quarter 20, so confused. Okay, I have not, let me preface this by saying I have not done any threading yet. It's on my to-do list. I just haven't got there yet. So, let's go ahead and bring us back into VCarve. And you're going to be doing quarter 20, you said, quarter-inch diameter, 20 threads per inch. Okay. I'm going to make let's put a small hole here, another one here, another one here. Diameter is 0.23. I want to make it smaller than that quarter inch. That may be too big. Let's close it. And let's select these holes, go over here into the thread milling toolpath. And there you are right there. Okay. This is the material setup. This is going to it's going to default. It's going to come over here into material setup to make sure where everything is. XY datum is correct. Z0 off the material surface. Gap above model 0.75. Rapid gaps, all that looks good. Okay. Start depth of my threading. Okay. Start depth is 0. Max depth of 1 inch. I'm going to make that, I want the hole to go through and through. Okay. I want the hole to go all the way through. So I'm setting this to go deeper than it needs to go. Okay. On the thread mill, you're going to choose whatever thread mill you have. I don't have a thread mill small enough to do quarter 20. Okay. I don't have a thread mill small enough to do quarter 20 threads. What you'll need to do, I'm guessing you already have one. There are basically 2 types of thread milling tools. there is what I'm trying to remember the terminology. One of them is a side cutter that will spiral down and cut those threads. The other is continuous threaded cutter. Basically, it looks like a standard tap for threading, but it's made to be run at these type of RPMs. Now, Leo Steger says a quarter 20 hole needs to be 0.203 diameter. That is correct. Those holes that I drew, 0.23, are there to hold as placeholders. Okay? Because what I'm going to do is go with the my pitch. Well, I've got to select my bit first. This is going to be too big. I can't use that bit. Can I use? Yeah, it's not going to let me select any of these bits. Well, okay. We'll select that one. All right. Those holes are just placeholders because I'm going to select my pitch here and we're going to go UTS 1/4, which is basically, I don't know I don't remember if UTS is 1/4 20 or not. Let's go with custom. Diameter 0.25 and the pitch. God, I can't remember what the pitch is on 1/4 20. I'm going to go with UTS 1/4 inch just for giggles. I don't remember the pitch. Okay. What it's going to do now here, Leo, for those of you who can speak, it's going to create the circles for the internal threads. Again, these circles here are placeholders. So it's going to create the circles for the internal threads right there. So it did, and they are selected. Okay, no, they're not selected. Let's close that. Let's go see what that size is. 0.218. And the other one was 0.23. Yes, okay, so the outside circles are the ones that I drew. All right. Had to double check there. So I just created a bunch of confusion. Let me start over. I did not create a toolpath. I'm going to make smaller circles just to mark the location of where I want those to be cut. And let's go 0.01, 10,000ths of an inch. And again, these are just placeholders. Okay. There, there, and there. Close. They are teeny tiny. Okay. So now I can select them all, go over here into the thread milling. There you are. I lost you. We're going to go a max depth of this. We're going to use this bit. I'm going to go, here's hoping that it will cut it. And now create circles for internal threads. No. 203. Boom. There are the circles for internal threads. Right there. So now I can select And I need to know what thread type internal. Are they left-handed or right-handed? I don't want left-handed threads. And I'm cutting top to bottom. Okay. Calculate. The tool is too large. I knew it was going to do that. Okay. Let's see here. Leo says raise the Z 0.050 per revolution of the tool in the negative direction. Yeah, you can get real complex in here. Okay, pitch is 0.050. Thank you for that, Leo. So I had that right. That right. Okay, I will want to put a little bit of a tolerance here, but my point on that was once you get your uh, diameter settings, you create the holes right here. And like I said, those little 10,000ths of an inch circles, that's just a placeholder. That's where I want that to go. So thread milling is on my list. What I need everybody to do, however, if you're interested in thread milling, is send a letter, an email to Vectrix support and ask them, please, please, please include Acme threads. Include support for Acme threads. Acme threads are so much better for woodworking than standard 60-degree threads. So much better. The reason for that is an Acme thread cuts a square thread instead of a angled thread. But you know the deal. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. So the more people that ask for it, the more likely are they use it. I know that probably didn't answer a whole heck of a lot of your question there, Kurt. I got to get into thread milling, and I will as soon as I get some done. I'll post the video on it. I have not done any thread milling. I knew this question was going to kill me. Now, Leo has done it. Yes, the preview does not show threads simply because it will not display an undercut. Okay. So, it may be just me, but isn't this too complex instead of using a tap? It depends. If you are, and again, I'm trying to remember what it's called. I believe it's called a continuous thread mill. Let's look up here. CNC thread mill. And you're looking at, this is the side mill type cutter. This is, well, let's get into imaging here. There we go. There's the two different types of cutters. You have, let's see, open image in new tab. There we go. You have a single side flute cutter, then you have continuous thread cutters. But if you look at it, you'll notice, and I'm sorry the picture isn't bigger, there's also spiral flutes here. These are made to be used in our type of equipment. The thing that you have to remember is you need to be able to slow down your spindle and reverse it. You are not, Mike Robbins wants to know, how do you reverse a router? You don't. That's the problem. You have to be able to bore in one direction and then come back out with the RPM turning the other direction. If you can't use this type of a thread mill. Okay? That's why you use this type of a thread mill. So why not use a tap if you're going to tap a bolt hole, say quarter 20, your better bet would probably be to use a hand tap if you're going to use a tap. If you want to use a thread mill, now you've got to get into what size thread mill you're going to have to get in order to be able to drill a quarter 20, to thread a quarter 20 hole. Quarter 20 is pretty small, especially for woodworking. And of course, I don't have a quarter 20 bolt handy, do I? Maybe I do. Yes, I do. These are some pretty fine threads for woodworking. And it's not going to focus. That's all right. Well, there we go. Those are some pretty fine threads for woodworking. Kurt H is asking what size thread is good for woodworking. I guess that would be a good place to start. It depends on what you're trying to thread. Are you making external holes? Are you making internal holes? Are you, excuse me. Well, Kurt says, as I was asking the question, quarter inch is way too small. Yeah, it is. Most of the instances where thread milling is used in woodworking is like a threaded top on a box, where you're talking about something that is 2, 3, 4 inches in diameter. And the internal thread is similar. And so they'll screw together like so. It's very rare that you will want to put threads into a piece of wood and then tighten a machine screw or bolt into it. If you're going to do that, over drill it slightly and use a T-nut on the back. Leo has a good point here. Put CA glue on the wood prior to tapping. Yeah, I've heard that. Now, Leo, do you use the thin CA or do you use the medium? I've heard both. So, Jerry Tax, or is it Takis? Thank you very much for becoming a channel member. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. Now, Kurt wants to make a big, big nut and bolt. For something like that, you wouldn't want quarter 20. And Dwayne is out here helping you, Dwayne Ruthig. You're both channel members. I'll try to hook you guys up behind the scenes. Dwayne makes some killer nuts and bolts, wooden nuts and bolts. He is the master. So, let's see here. Leo uses the thin. Okay, the thin CA glue. All right. I was wondering about that because I've heard both. So, Jerry, as a channel member, you have access to my members only live streams that I do every Monday evening at 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. And the way to find those live streams is to head over to my YouTube channel and come down here to community, click on the community tab, and you will, I'm not going to do it because everybody will see it. Scroll down a little bit and you will find the link to tomorrow's members only live stream. Thank you for becoming a channel member. Welcome aboard. And you and Dion will get a proper welcome tomorrow evening if you're in the chat. So thank you for becoming a channel member. All right. The thread milling is kind of an art of its own. Well, I won't say an art of its own, but it is definitely a skill to be developed. And I'm just not there yet. I haven't done any thread milling yet. I've got a few thread mills. I just haven't been able to get to that. And I will get to it. And believe me, there will be videos. Okay, that's all the questions from you folks that I have seen. I have one more um, question that I picked out of the bunch, and this is by Dan Kinski, who was talking about basically here. My question is, um, I see on your videos that your toolpath settings are X. Can I clone them on my CNC? For instance, he says, I run my 1/4 inch end mill at 21,000 RPM, 1/4 inch depth per cut, but speed is 80 inches per minute. I just saw your 1/4 inch end mill and was like 180 inches per minute. That just seems crazy fast. My reply to him is, it is crazy fast. And here's what I'm talking about. If I go into my tool database and I look at my 1/4 inch end mill, this is what he's referring to. The feed rate is 180 inches per minute, and the plunge rate is 60 inches per minute. That is on this computer that I use to demonstrate the program. That is not the feed rate I'm going to use on a real project. All of my feed rates, well, almost all of my feed rates on this computer only are set pretty high. That way, when I go to demonstrate a toolpath, we're not sitting here for an hour and a half waiting for the preview to finish. That preview needs to get finished pretty quickly. So the feed rates on this computer are set crazy fast. But this is just for demonstration purposes. Now, one thing I will say, you said that your toolpath, you're running 21,000 RPM at 80 inches per minute. I would speed that up. Either speed up your uh, uh, feed rate to 100 or 120 inches per minute, or slow that RPM down. The first place I would go, I would slow that RPM down to 16,000. I wouldn't run that 1/4 inch end mill at 21,000. And RPMs equal heat. The faster you spin that bit, the more likely you are to get develop heat. So I would drop those RPMs down to about 16,000 and bump up that feed rate to start it at 100 and see if that is any better. But I would not run that bit that fast, that high of RPM. So, okay. So that, I guess I should say that more often during these lives when I'm demonstrating a toolpath, that these feed rates are for demonstration and display purposes only. Now, there are some that I don't have entered in here because people wouldn't believe me if they saw it. For instance, I'm getting ready to surface my new spoil board, and I'm going to run that Amana RC2255 bit at 350 inches a minute. A lot of folks will look at that and go, say what? But I'm only taking 20 thousandths of an inch off at a time. And that amount of surfacing bit doesn't even feel that MDF at that feed rate. So, you know, but I don't show that here. It's set to, I think, 180. So, and it too is running at, but I think I have that turned down to 14,000 RPM because on a larger bit, the outside of that bit can actually break the sound barrier if you try to run it too fast. And none of us want that. All righty. This was an experiment. I'd like to get your input. I'd like to know if following up on questions I got from comments is something you like. If it is, I'll continue to do these every once in a while. If it's not, if you'd rather have a main topic to focus on, I can do that as well. I took this opportunity of it being a holiday, knowing that fathers are going to go out and barbecue or they're going to spend time with their families or kids. So I knew I would get a little bit smaller of a turnout. But it's 100% up to you. This has never been about me. This has always been about you. I want to know what you want to learn. I want to know what you want to talk about. So, if it's something that you guys like, please let me know. Share a comment down in the comment section. Give it a thumbs up if it works out all right. And, if you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. I'd like to say thank you to Dion and thank you to Jerry for becoming channel members. Hope to see you tomorrow evening, at least in the chat. And tomorrow is still a little bit up in the air. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Yeah. All right. 8 center. Good feedback. I like main topics more because there's a focus, which is easy to look up again later. Yeah, I agree. A couple years ago, I started a series, Your Questions Answered. And I only made 2 or 3 of those videos because it's harder than heck to index it. Okay, your questions are answered, but was it about vector creation? Was it about 3D modeling? Was it about work holding? It's kind of difficult to get all that added in to a title when they only let you have 90 characters and to a thumbnail so it doesn't look like, a wall of text for a thumbnail so that you can't read. So, yeah, I tend to agree with you there. So let's go ahead and wrap this one up. I don't know what I'm going to have next week. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you want to see. But I don't know what I'm going to do. We'll figure that out. Channel members, tomorrow begins. It's the first members only live stream of the 3rd year. We finished 2 years. I don't believe it. I know some of you can't believe it. It's absolutely insane to me. But that means there are 104 members only live streams for you new members to take advantage of. Just click on the live link on my YouTube channel and you'll find a playlist for all the members only live streams, and you'll find links to each individual live stream if you want to go back and review all 104 of them. If you're not into that, hope to see you tomorrow. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about or you want information on becoming a channel member, just right down there by the subscribe button somewhere is a join button. Click on that button. You're not joining, but a panel's going to pop up and a video is going to play to tell you all about channel membership. Then you can decide from there. We hope to have you aboard. We have a lot of fun. And Members, I'll see you tomorrow, 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. And for everybody else, I'll see you next Sunday. We'll figure something out. Now go have a great rest of your Father's Day, doing whatever it is you like to do. It's your day. Remember that. So, yep, that's it. Y'all take care. Have a great week. And thank you for spending part of your day with me.